Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast with your hosts, Jason Balin and Ian Horowitz.
What is up, Ian? Happy Thursday to you.
Yeah, man, I'm back. I've been. It's been a interesting week so far. I can say the least.
Yeah, I can tell you got a beard, haven't shaved.
That means I haven't been at work. I should just quit.
Got your Carhartt sweatshirt on, just doing it.
I should quit and live my best life. That's what I should do.
Living your best life like a few other fellas we know.
Yeah,
nice.
Man.
Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Today is Thursday, February 18th. Got a really good and intriguing and helpful topic for everybody today. The real cost of storms and damage at your properties and some tips and tricks to avoid costly expenses. No better time than to bring up this topic than today. If you're on the East Coast, you probably got hit with some weather, some snow turned into ice. A lot of us are potentially at home, didn't want to go into the office today. And let's jump in and talk about some things, tips and tricks that we all do, some precautions we might take in place. And again, this is for real estate investors who are fixing and flipping houses. You might be in the middle of a construction project right now. This is for rental property owners who have a portfolio of rentals that could be affected during this, either the property or potentially your tenants. This affects us as a lender. This affects, our company to make sure, some of the loans that we did, our collateral is real estate, right? So it affects everybody. It affects insurance companies. It affects real estate agents, right? For listings that they have, potential buyers that they have, it could potentially affect showings and things like that. So let's kind of jump in and maybe we'll kind of talk about preventative things first. Some things that we both put in place.
Yeah, we could do that. I feel like I need to share this story, and this is part of why I find this topic. And by the way, Facebook's news sharing setting is absolutely terrible, where we like to drop all these posts, so I apologize, but I'm paying attention. First off, I'd like to start off by talking about, I know this isn't maybe real estate related, but we were down looking at our storage facility in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I flew in Sunday night. Monday, they got a ice storm.
Yeah, what's an ice storm down there?
Oh my God, dude. So they, I got to get this off my chest. They literally shut down the whole city. All that you could drive everywhere. They don't have any salt trucks. Everything was wide open, But that's why I find this topic to be relevant because it's absolutely crazy. The lines nothing was open. No grocery stores. No nothing. They were losing power left and right. But a lot of these houses aren't set up to handle the cold weather. And you see all these videos coming out of Texas and the Midwest, and they're just getting destroyed with no water and frozen pipes and no way to heat because a lot of their houses are built to prevent the heat from coming into their houses with high gable ceilings. And the insulation potentially different. They don't have to wrap their pipes. And it was an experience. I got on the plane to fly home, and the flight crew was stuck in Houston the night before. The airport had no water. They had no way to get food for almost 24 hours. So there were some crazy stories. But being out there and seeing no salt trucks and having the cold weather that they had and just seeing how all the people reacted, you got to start to think about your contractors that are working on your job sites. What are you doing to set your houses up for when we do have snow? And how do you manage to make sure that you don't have roof leaks or when there's a hurricane? Because their whole thing was everyone I met down there, they're like, oh, well, if it was a hurricane, we'd be fine. But if it was a snow, it's a snowstorm, so it's the end of the world. And I was like, well, yeah, it's the same thing for us. We can handle snow, but we can't handle a hurricane. Right. So it was an interesting fact. And, you start talking, we know some investors across the country that work in like Florida and that lower panhandle of Texas and Alabama and like that area. You start getting into different types of materials that you need to use. But first and foremost here locally, like when we have nasty cold snaps or snowstorms, when we build the houses, we try to build them right on day one. That's one of the things that we always try to do. And if you're following most of the city codes, you're not going to have many issues with freezing pipes, or you shouldn't have any issues with like insulation and downdrafts and everything else. One of our big things is obviously whenever you can replace the roof. If you're replacing your roofs, especially the flat roofs with the snow, it's going to sit up there, it's going to freeze, and it's going to thaw. It's going to push up against any type of crack, your rubber roof membrane is going to expand and contract, and you're really going to, this is when you find out if you have a roof leak, and now's the time to fix it. But we like to absolve that issue on day one. Another thing is when you're running your plumbing, a good, credible plumber most likely will not, unless they absolutely have to, run any pipes on an exterior wall. And if they do, make sure they're wrapped. Make sure they're properly insulated. Make sure you have access to them if you think they're going to freeze. If you're going to have a freezing issue, notify your tenant and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Instead of us both having a problem, can you just crack the faucet overnight and keep the water running? Anyone could go online right now and go see videos of Texas. Water is just pouring through, right? Like for those that don't know, it freezes in the pipe, and then the water gets back up around it, but it expands and it cracks the pipe. And then once the water comes through, it blows the pipe apart and you have a massive issue. In our big building that we just bought, in one of the sprinkler systems, we actually have a pipe warmer on one of the sprinklers. That's something that you could look at. So that's pretty much for cold weather operations.
Yeah, and a few things to note, you use the term build houses, but these aren't new construction houses that Ian's building. These are properties that he's buying as rental properties that he, spends real money on the front end. And he doesn't skimp on some of the things on the front end because it makes sense to do them right at the beginning, right? Having your major mechanicals being new or updated, having your roof being new and updated, a lot of other kind of big ticket capital expenditure items you do up front, and based on their life expectancy. So you don't have to, do that when you need it, or you don't have to do it if it's an emergency. That's a better way to look at it.
And that's a good one. A lot of people, I see a lot of people talk about like replacing a heater, especially if it's oil based. Now's a time when we had a little bit of a cold snap. You start pulling a lot of oil. It might not get filled up in time. They start sucking out the sludge. Your thing gets clogged up. It backfires. It causes smoke. It makes the whole house smell. And that becomes an issue. That's one of the reasons we like to swap them out, put a gas furnace in whenever we can, if it's available to us, or a heat pump, and get rid of the oil heat. There's a lot of benefits to doing that. And if you could replace them today, think about it. A local real estate investor that has a bigger portfolio than us. I remember being at a event with him, and he was like, every time some sort of weather event happens, it costs me $10,000. And I laughed at it. But then the last few weeks, the kids were like, ooh, it's going to snow. It's going to snow. And I was like, yeah, I'm excited. It's going to cost us $10,000 because we got to plow all of our lots. A roof leak's going to happen. Tree branches are going to fall. Those are all things you got to look, it's just funny how the life cycle goes. Yeah. Sorry, I know I'm going on a run on, but I just dealt with that ice storm, seeing all the broken trees. That's one of the reasons we trim up all the trees around our property when we can, for situations like this, when wind blows through ice or snow, gets those trees heavy, they break, they smack your building, they break a piece of your building. It's just one more thing that you can get rid of.
Yeah, I mean, water, snow, ice, all of that stuff is just not good for real estate. And everybody who's been in real estate long enough knows that, that's the case. And I mean, unfortunately, if you have stuff that are pending projects, and they snap or they break or they leak too early, too quick before you get them replaced, it's going to cost you double, right? You might as well get it done the right way. You're never going to be able to get everything done the right way, right? Like we had a tree right now on one of our rental properties, and it's overhanging into the neighbor. And now with ice and heavy snow on there, it's leaning, and it's someone with a wheelchair next door. They're having a hard time kind of getting in because our tree's on their proproperty. So got to pay a premium last minute to get somebody to cut it. And I mean, that's obviously a little example. Big example would be a humongous water main break or bursted pipes. But it's something in general. I think kind of the biggest takeaway of what we've talked about so far is making sure you do the right things up front. And so many people want to skimp because they want to make their numbers work. I get it. It's hard to find good opportunities. A lot of the times, if you do a full renovation or if you do everything that you want to do, the numbers won't work. But again, it's got to be a good product, especially if you're buying a rental property, right? If it's a long-term rental property, you don't have to be as concerned about how much equity you have, gross equity, perceived equity you have today, right? Because again, it's a long-term hold. You're not looking to make a quick flip profit on it. You want it to be a good product. And if you're holding it for a long term, you know you're going to have it in the future anyways. So,
yeah, I was going to say, if anyone has any questions, feel free. You guys want to hop on the show? This is kind of like a freestyle show. I was supposed to be traveling all week, so we didn't know we were going to get this in. I said, hey, Jay, let's jump online. Let's talk about weather. And I know it might be a weird topic, but one of the things like Jay just brought up is that we were talking about is it's hard enough to renovate a house without a tenant. Can you imagine trying to renovate a house with a tenant in that just had an emergency because the water pipe froze and broke? You have to swap out a whole heater unit. They have no heat for 48 hours. Some of the programs that you might deal with, you start to have issues and emergency moves. So take the time and renovate it right on day one. We've done a few houses where it's like, oh, we'll just go in and give it lipstick. And lipstick on a pig turns into a big project every single time. And I think long-term, when you look at your CapEx for the cost that you're putting in on day one, it's easier to get capital on day one. It's easier to budget for it. It gives you a much more clear-cut picture of what you have. It allows you to build your houses out right and long-term. And everything that's in there. And sometimes, like, you're swapping out heaters, you're swapping out water heaters, you're swapping out appliances. These types of things, when you do have an emergency in cold weather, it's manufacturer warranty, right? And I know we're not the best at it, but sometimes, you can utilize a manufacturer warranty to absolve some of your costs because your heater has a 5 or 10 year warranty. Your water heater has a 1 year warranty. And it helps reduce your CapEx long term. So
yeah, all makes sense. So, a lot of that stuff's rental stuff related to flipping, similar process. If you've been flipping long enough, you need to put a good product together for your end buyer. In order to sell for a top dollar, even in a hot market like this, it needs to be a good product. And it's important to do a lot of the stuff. And I'll tell you, if you're a flipper and you run across weather like this, it's a pain in the ass, right? Your contractors can't work. If there's anything external, obviously you can't really do that. But in general, it's delays and it's time, but it's something to take into consideration up front, right? I think it's important to that. And I know, I've been in the middle of flips. I've done loans for investors that have been in the middle of flips, and stuff like this is tough. And if you're not doing it kind of the proper way, you're gonna have to redo work. And the last thing you want to do is redo work. There's a ton of risk. Nobody budgets for it. So
well, and actually, one of the cost-saving measures you could do, because we've done flips in the middle of the winter. There's a funny video going around where Dan's power washing in the middle of after a snowstorm had just taken place, and I'm doing a live video. But anyway, so one of the things you can do to save some money is we keep our heat at 55 degrees, and in the summertime we try not to run the AC if the guys are working in there, because all that stuff gets sucked through your unit. Number two is, if the guys got to get the drywall done, they're running their kerosene heaters, it's a fire hazard overnight. You want to be careful about letting them run them all night. You want to do what you can do to keep your guys and your property safe and secure, but there's also a cost to it. Sometimes we wouldn't turn the water on right until before we were ready to sell it, just because it was so cold out. Because when we were flipping it, I think 17 or 16, we had a real bad winter. It was super cold out. We were having, we found every broken pipe, found every problem we had at every single house, and had to reroute them. So those are all little things. And then don't forget, I think a lot of people overlook it, especially on your job sites, is make sure you have someone go out and shovel your sidewalks or your driveway. You don't want to have that risk and hazard of the slip and fall on a contractor suing you. And number two, at some point, the city or county is going to be up your butt for not shoveling your sidewalk. Yeah. That's my good service tip for the day.
And so many investors try to skimp on not getting liability insurance. Like, this is the time you need liability insurance. We've seen situations where, property in Federal Hill with a sidewalk, someone was walking on the sidewalk, they slipped and fell, and they tried to sue the owner in front of their house. Right. And again, there's an argument of if that patch of that sidewalk belonged to the owner, belonged to the city or what. But the fact is, they still had to, defend themselves, against a lawsuit for a trip and fall. So liability, I mean, I know a lot of real estate investors typically either get builder's risk insurance or they get some sort of landlord policy, but the liability is important as well, especially like this. Someone's getting hurt outside. It's a neighbor walks, so something happens, or potentially a tree falls from your property into a neighbor's property. That's happened to us in a property that we had in Towson, where a property fell on the neighbor's house, or a tree fell in the neighbor's house. So again, this isn't an insurance conversation because insurance isn't sexy to talk about, but it's sexy because it saves us a hell of a lot of money by having the right policies in place. And make sure you get with your carrier on what to have in place for all these occasions.
And don't forget, if there is a downed tree, you should probably take the time to go and check to see if there's a power outage, because your heat's not going to run if there's a power outage, right? Like there's no electric, you can't call for heat, and you're not going to be able to run the blower motor. So it's something to keep an eye on. It's, like I look at these guys in Texas, they just had this nasty, storm. They're going to be out of power for a few days, and that's something that you want to watch out for, and just keep an eye. BGE is pretty good about checking your power. Delmarva or any of the other power service companies, you can usually go online, see what the outage is. If you're going to have an extended outage, you might want to go drain your system. Something you can do is run antifreeze in all of your pipe in your drain pipes, where all the traps are, because water actually sits in the bottom of the trap. So you want to run some antifreeze in there and protect yourself. I know we're talking a lot about cold weather ways to protect yourself, but that's what's going on right now. And the winter is not over. I think Groundhog's Day, they said 6 more weeks, which I can be done with sooner than later, but that's where we are.
What do you think happens in different areas of the country now that this has occurred and they're just not used to it? Do the Texases, the Tennessees, do you think they're going to change building codes? I've seen a lot of stuff on social related to boathouses collapsing at marinas and places like that, where, those structures aren't used to having ice or snow sit on them. I mean, again, if you get a deck or you get a roof or a rooftop deck or you get some sort of canopy locally, they're built and they're reinforced for hazards like that to occur. But
sure, we have snow loads here. That's something that, when you're building new houses, or any building here, they account for snow load here, which they don't in other jurisdictions, just like we don't account for hurricane grade windows, right? Or if you're down the beach, you might have a different requirement for elevations where you can have your first floor based on floodplains. I don't know. I mean, it's potentially a systemic problem, but it's once every 10, 15 years, kind of like a flood that it happens, and hopefully it's not long lived. If I was a Serve Pro type or somebody down like there, I'd be selling like hell, especially plumbers. Hey, you should insulate all your pipes, and probably a great time to upsell all that stuff,
Exactly. So I don't necessarily know this answer, Ian, but if you see Brian's question, maybe
I am texting him now just to confirm what it was, and I've been told it attaches to your water line and it detects any water flow that shouldn't be happening, and it's app-based.
Makes sense.
Which we don't
kind of self-explanatory with what that product's called. Okay, that makes sense.
And he has I'm assuming he's probably thinking for his beach house, and if he's away for a few months at a time, or it's being rented out to a tenant, you could detect it. It's probably good for something like that. We don't necessarily. It automatically shuts off the water line. That's an awesome product. We try not to have vacancies that long to have to deal with that, but potentially for what the cost is, if you know what the cost is, pop it in there. Someone that's doing a flip and it's an easy swap in and swap out, it would make sense if you could keep it going with you to each flip. That's actually a really good idea. But our goal was always not to be there that long or have a vacancy that long to have to deal with it.
When he posted that, it reminded me of this product that I was talking to this buddy of mine at soccer practice the other night, and he was telling me about this product they have in their pool in their backyard that's similar, that it's got this sensor, and if there's any movement in the water, like if a kid falls in, that's the goal of it, because they have young kids, and it's like, challenging to have a pool with young kids, and it's this sensor, and if there's any like ripples in water, obviously maybe if a leaf falls in there, it's probably fine, but any maybe ripples, all of a sudden a crazy sound shoots out.
Yeah, we had we were looking because we were having some issues there for a little bit of getting robbed at houses where they were stealing the condenser units or cutting the lines, and there's a leak detector for that we considered putting in, but unless you have a whole alarm system, it wasn't really Bluetooth, like didn't notify you on an app. It was kind of a pain in the butt, but it's a good deterrent, and a lot of this stuff relates between theft deterrence and some of your cold weather protections or your warm weather events, like all these things kind of work hand in hand. But there's also this fine line of like how much stuff you do sweat. It's kind of hard to. It's like telling someone, "Oh, well, you don't need to do all of it," but at a certain point, you kind of just got to go with it, and you could overspend, right? Like just like borrowers could overspend on flips. I'm sure you see it all the time. You could overspend on all these protections and never need it. Or you spend all this money on all this protection and it doesn't even do what it's supposed to do.
Sure.
So
I think to sum up a lot of this conversation is do your projects the right way. And that's not foolproof, right? You can have the right piping, you can have everything, shit still freezes, right? Stuff still occurs. You're not going to necessarily prevent, a neighbor's tree from falling in your yard and cracking your roof, right? Like shit happens, right? Or potentially, ice building up on branches and a branch falling down and cracking a windshield of one of your tenants' cars. That stuff all happens. That's nature. Like it's part of it. But I think too many people, especially now because deals are harder to come by and the margins are tight, they want to skimp on little things. And I just don't see that being a viable business. I've seen, we were involved in some of our rentals like that years ago, and it made it worse, right? You're re-renovating a house, or you're just spending double for some of that stuff.
Hey, if anyone's looking to bet on the next 10 snow seasons, put that comment up from Dan Matthey. You guys heard it here first. We're buying a new truck with a plow this summer. So go ahead and put your bets in. It will not snow for the next 5 years. Guaranteed. We will not use the plow, but we're going to protect against the inevitable. So go ahead.
You don't use your insurance policies anyways. So what's the difference?
Yeah, go ahead.
And I know what your insurance invoices are. They're similar to mine, and they're almost in freaking six figures a year. So
imagine having this snowplow.
This is your insurance policy.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine.
Then you'll figure it out. You'll get your money's worth. So what are you doing? Are you buying the plow from one of your additional trucks? Are you going to buy a separate truck with it?
One of our trucks is getting a little tired. So we're going to consider replacing it with more of like a service type truck, with a plow and a salter. And we have enough staff now that we can handle.
And you have big facilities now. So it'll pay for itself without, are you still going to outsource a service to do it, or will you guys do it internally now?
No, we'll most likely do it internally. But on like a major snowstorm like we had back in 2010, you start getting a couple feet, we'll have to contract out like a Bobcat or a backhoe or something like that to come in and help, because we can luckily it's only two big properties that we really, really have to worry about. So for now, it's next year's goal to add that to the fleet, and hopefully offset some of the costs, because sometimes you just can't control it. It's like one of the things with the snow contractors. It's kind of it's not like grass cutting where it's very clean cut of like, very straightforward of like what a grass cut costs, right? Like we know that product and what it's going to cost us. You can't predict snow. It keeps snowstorm like this, where it dumps a little bit and then you salt, and then it dumps a little bit later at night, and then you salt it and you plow it. Those are the ones you get crushed on. And like Dan just said, it's about 2 snowstorms we'll pay for it ourselves, and even paying the labor, we'll get the return. It'll help us, it'll help our investors, and it's a win-win situation. But then again, when it snows on Christmas, I'm sure you'll see some videos about one of us pitching. So
sure.
God, what do we have now? I guess we are at we're right around the 200 mark. We just purchased the 80,000 square foot commercial facility, and we have another at our West Virginia project. We should be adding about another 20 units here shortly. So we're just slowly grinding, growing every day. That's where we are. So I do have an update on some eviction stuff when you're ready.
Yeah, update us away.
Jack from the Small Developers Collected eviction report. He has posts on a few of the different websites. Check it out, or go check out Small Developers Collective. It's really, really good. He talks about how many evictions are going on in the city right now. Rental licenses, we're still under a state of emergency, so it'll be 30 days after that you need to get yours renewed. Blah, 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 blah.
There's so 30 days after the state of emergency is
lifted, yes. Oh, yep. And then we have there's a new water bill system coming out, and I'm sure it's going to cost us more money, but we're going to be allowed to add tenants to the water bills. I don't know if they'll be responsible, but based on their income, you can potentially get a discount on your water bill. And the courts, the most important one, courts are entering phase 4 on March 15th, 2021. They will start hearing rent cases again. I'm sure it'll be very slow rollout. They're saying possibly phase 5. I think that's back to normal operations by April 26th. So they are starting to hear court cases again. If you want additional information, check out smalldeveloperscollective.org. We're slowly but surely getting there. I did get an email from our eviction service, and they basically said the same thing, that we're slowly opening up. There's going to be a massive backlog, but we're getting back to normal operations here slowly but surely. So that's where we are at.
Nice.
So, it's nice to see Dan commenting. Glad to know he's alive. So that was fun.
Yeah, you guys aren't in the same spot today, so
yeah.
Who would know?
What else you got, man? You got anything else?
Nah, I think I'm good. I'm just laughing at a Facebook post.
Which one?
From somebody we mutually know.
Oh, all right. But anyway, there's only so much you can do.
And the comments associated with it.
Oh, I'm sure that comment log's going to get out of control here shortly. So stalk one of us on Facebook. You'll find us. So, but anyway, man, yeah, enjoy your snow day. And do whatever you can do to protect yourself. I don't know what else to tell you.
Cool. Who got live?
I've been doing this. I've been doing this since 2004. No, that's a lot. 2012-ish, 13. I bought my first house. 2013, I bought my first house. 2014, we did our first flip, and it's all over from there. So it's where we are.
All downhill from there?
Yeah, man, just snowball. But it's a snowball. It's like everything we've ever talked about before.
Uphill. I know.
Snowball.
Yeah, you got to start with one, and then you work your way up, and then you get into multifamily and some commercial and some storage and things
whatever
like that.
Whatever fits in your investment portfolio, So
yeah, that's right. You got to have the end in mind and then work backwards. Any good coach will always tell you that. You got to figure out what your game plan is and what you want to occur, where you see yourself in 10 years, work yourself back to 5 years, 2.5 years, 1 year, 6 months, and 2 weeks.
Yep.
And you'll know exactly, if you follow that plan, you'll know exactly what you need to do within 2 weeks.
Oh, you know what else?
Where you need to be in 10 years.
Yeah, and I look forward. I hear there's some new coaches coming to market here potentially shortly. So make sure you find a coach that fits your lifestyle and your visions. Not every coach shares the same vision, and they might live a different lifestyle than what you want, right? But something I did want to bring up, Jay, I know we've been going back and forth, and we might not have a ton of viewers today, but we'll get a lot of watches. And if you make it to this part of the video, we're serious. We're going to shoot out an email here shortly. We're talking about making a real estate reserve podcast community. It'll be its own app. It'll be its own community. If that's something you guys would like to see or see us do, it's going to take a little bit of work to get up and going, but it'll be fun. It's off of Facebook. It's not just a standard website forum. It's like it actually kind of works like a Facebook type app, but you don't have all the drama of Facebook. That's why I have some other social stuff that I don't do anymore because I can't stand to get on and hear about the coronavirus and the election and everything else. So if that's something you guys want to see us do, let us know. We're starting to put it together potentially. We don't know if we're going to do it, but I think there'll be some good interest and good conversations that come out of it. So,
man.
All right. Well,
All right. Well, we got some shows lined up, I think, for next week. So everybody enjoy, and we'll check you all later.
see.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for